The Grand Wizard's Dark and Hypnotic World by L.S. Larkey and Atlantean Astrology. Chapter 2 of 15, The Infinite Reflections. The young man stood in a chamber that seemed to exist outside the normal flow of time. The air was dense, heavy, as if it had not been moved by a breeze in centuries, and even his thoughts felt slow, weighed down by an unseen force. His heartbeat echoed faintly in his ears, a dull reminder that he was still alive, still tethered to the reality he had known, though everything around him seemed to suggest otherwise. The fortress was immense, carved into the very stone of the mountain, yet in this room it felt as though the entire world had condensed into this one space, this one moment. Before him, a mirror stood, tall and imposing. At first glance it seemed ordinary, its frame simple and unadorned, its surface polished to a gleaming finish. But the longer he stared at it, the more he sensed something beneath the surface, something that went beyond its reflective nature. The air around the mirror crackled with an energy that made his skin prickle, a subtle hum that seemed to emanate from the glass itself, as if it were alive. Behind him, the Grand Wizard moved silently, his presence a shadow that seemed to merge with the walls. His robes, dark and flowing, whispered against the stone floor like the soft hiss of a serpent, and his voice, when it came, was low and steady, as though the words themselves were part of the ancient stones around them. "You've come far to stand before this mirror," the Grand Wizard said, his voice a quiet rumble that filled the room. "But what you see is not what you think. This mirror does not reflect what is. It reflects what could be." The young man's heart quickened. He had come here seeking power, knowledge, and mastery over the forces that shaped the world. He could feel that he was on the edge of something monumental, something that would change him forever. The air itself seemed to hold its breath, as though the very fabric of reality was waiting for what would come next. "What could be?" the young man asked, his voice barely more than a whisper, his curiosity tinged with a growing unease. The Grand Wizard stepped closer, his dark eyes gleaming with a knowledge that was both vast and terrifying. "You believe mirrors show you the truth," he said softly, "that when you look into them, you see yourself as you are. But that is a lie. Mirrors do not show reality. They show us other dimensions, infinite versions of what could be. When you gaze into the glass, you are not looking at yourself. You are looking at countless possible versions of you, all existing at once." The young man blinked, his mind struggling to grasp the enormity of the idea. He turned his gaze back to the mirror, staring hard at the reflection that stared back at him, his own face, pale and drawn with the weight of his ambitions. But was it his face? The longer he looked, the more he began to notice small details that didn't seem right. His eyes were darker than they should have been, his jaw set in a way that felt unfamiliar. It was as though the reflection had taken on a life of its own, a version of him that was him, but not him. "You are seeing only a fragment," the Grand Wizard continued, his voice calm but commanding. "The mirror shows you a single possibility, one thread among countless others, but that is not the lesson you are here to learn." With a slow, deliberate motion, the Grand Wizard reached behind him and produced another mirror. This one was larger, its frame wrought from a dark, shimmering metal that seemed to drink in the light. He placed it behind the young man so that the two mirrors faced each other, with him standing in between them. The effect was immediate and unsettling. The air around him seemed to thicken, growing heavier, as if the room itself was bending under the weight of something vast and unseen. He felt a strange pressure in his chest, like standing on the edge of a great abyss. "Look again," the Grand Wizard said. The young man turned back to the first mirror, and what he saw made his breath catch in his throat. The reflection was gone, replaced by a swirling mass of stars and galaxies, an infinite expanse of space that seemed to stretch out in all directions. The mirror was no longer a mirror. It had become a window, a portal into the vast, unknowable universe beyond. "This," the Grand Wizard's voice echoed through the chamber, "is the true nature of reality. Endless, infinite, every moment, every choice, every possibility, it all exists, not as a shadow of what might be, but as a reality in itself. The mirror does not reflect you, it reflects all that could be you." The young man took a step closer, his hand trembling as he reached out toward the swirling expanse. His fingertips brushed the surface of the mirror, and to his astonishment it gave way. His hand sank into the glass as though it had turned to liquid, and a rush of cold energy surged up his arm. Before he could pull back, the mirror seemed to pull him in, drawing him through the glass and into the infinite void beyond. He stumbled forward, his body weightless, and suddenly he was no longer in the fortress. He was floating in the vast expanse of space, surrounded by stars that blazed like distant suns. Panic flared in his chest, but it was quickly overwhelmed by awe. He was standing between worlds, between realities, in a place that defied all reason and comprehension. The stars around him shifted and swirled, forming patterns that danced and flickered as if they were alive. Time had no meaning here, nor did space. He could feel it, an endless expanse of possibility, each star a different version of reality, each one a path not taken. "You are now outside of time," the Grand Wizard's voice echoed through the void, though the young man could not see him. "This is the space between spaces, the void where all realities meet. It is here that you will learn the true nature of power." The young man's breath came in shallow gasps. He felt as though he was standing on the edge of something incomprehensible, something far greater than himself. The stars around him pulsed and flickered, each one representing a different reality, a different version of his life, of the world itself. He turned slowly, his gaze sweeping across the expanse, and in that moment he understood. The power he sought was not control over men or kingdoms. It was not wealth or influence. It was this: the understanding that all things were possible, that reality itself was a tapestry of infinite threads, each one woven into the fabric of existence. Every decision, every action, every thought created a new reality, a new world, and he stood at the center of it all, able to see the entire structure laid bare before him. "You now see what others cannot," the Grand Wizard's voice whispered in his ear. "Power is not about domination, it is about choice. The power to shape reality, to walk among infinite possibilities, to choose the path that will lead you to greatness." The young man's mind raced, the weight of the revelation settling over him like a mantle of cold iron. He had always believed that power was something to be seized, something to be taken from others. But now he saw that it was something far more subtle, far more dangerous. It was the ability to see beyond the limits of the present, to understand the infinite web of possibilities that stretched out before him, and to navigate that web with precision and purpose. But with that knowledge came a darker truth. The infinite possibilities were not just paths to power. They were paths to ruin, to madness. For every version of himself that achieved greatness, there were countless others that failed, that fell into obscurity or madness, swallowed by the weight of their own ambition. He could see them now, flickering in and out of existence, shadowy reflections of himself that had taken different paths and met different fates. He reached out again, his hand trembling as he touched one of the stars that represented another version of his life. As his fingers brushed its surface, he was pulled into a new reality, one where he had never met the Grand Wizard, where he had remained a simple man, his ambitions unfulfilled. The weight of it crushed him, and he recoiled, gasping for breath. "You must learn to navigate the possibilities," the Grand Wizard said, "to understand that for every victory there is a cost. Every path you choose will open some doors and close others. This is the burden of true power." The young man's head swam with the enormity of it all. He had sought power, but now he saw that it was not something to be taken lightly. It was a heavy, terrible thing, a responsibility that could drive a lesser man to madness. And yet he could not turn away from it. The allure of the infinite possibilities was too great, the temptation too powerful. He steadied himself, his breath coming in shallow bursts as he turned back toward the stars. He had come this far, and there was no turning back now. He would master this power, this knowledge of the infinite, and he would use it to bend reality itself to his will. With a final, determined breath, he stepped forward into the swirling void, his eyes fixed on the path ahead. He could see it now, his future, his destiny, laid out before him like a shining beacon in the darkness. And though the journey would be fraught with danger, with uncertainty and sacrifice, he knew that he would emerge victorious. For he had seen the infinite possibilities, and he had chosen his path.